1. Where do you go? 2. Where do you live? 3. Where do you dance? 4. Where do you sing? 5. Where do you play? 6. Where do you sit? 7. Where do you talk? 8. Where do you walk? 9. Where do you swim? 10. Where do you write? 11. Where do you read? 12. Where do you eat? 13. Where do you sleep? 14. Where do you drive? 15. Where do you fly? 16. Where do you climb? 17. Where do you think? 18. Where do you create? 19. Where do you solve? 20. Where do you win? 21. Where do you lose? 22. Where do you meet? 23. Where do you discover? 24. Where do you see? 25. Where do you keep? 26. Where do you sweep? 27. Where do you clean? 28. Where do you cook? 29. Where do you paint? 30. Where do you draw? 31. Where do you listen? 32. Where do you speak? 33. Where do you learn? 34. Where do you teach? 35. Where do you open? 36. Where do you close? 37. Where do you lock? 38. Where do you shout? 39. Where do you join? 40. Where do you work? 41. Where do you study? 42. Where do you find? 43. Where do you help? 44. Where do you support? 45. Where do you give? 46. Where do you receive? 47. Where do you enter? 48. Where do you relax? 49. Where do you meditate? 50. Where do you sing? 51. Where do you travel? 52. Where do you plan? 53. Where do you cut? 54. Where do you hear? 55. Where do you put? 56. Where do you communicate? 57. Where do you take? 58. Where do you contribute? 59. Where do you cry? 60. Where do you design? 61. Where do you dig? 62. Where do you fight? 63. Where do you fix? 64. Where do you hide? 65. Where do you invent? 66. Where do you build? 67. Where do you hit? 68. Where do you investigate? 69. Where do you lead? 70. Where do you measure? 71. Where do you water? 72. Where do you plant? 73. Where do you wear? 74. Where do you question? 75. Where do you react? 76. Where do you research? 77. Where do you serve? 78. Where do you share? 79. Where do you solve? 80. Where do you train? 81. Where do you unite? 82. Where do you buy? 83. Where do you sell? 84. Where do you stop? 85. Where do you watch? 86. Where do you rest? 87. Where do you read 88? Where do you write 89? Where do you stay 90? Where do you rent 91? Where do you borrow 92? Where do you feed 93? Where do you hold 94? Where do you attend 95? Where do you come 96? Where do you use 97? Where do you kiss 98? Where do you run 99? Where do you laugh 100? Where do you jump